Now, 12 months ago, Britain was on the brink in the wake of the horrific Southport attack. Emotions ran high and unrest poured onto our streets.
But 1 year on, with protests against migrant hotels breaking out, has Britain learnt anything? Has the government learnt anything? Or are our communities more divided than ever?
We're joining us our Home and Security editor, Mark White, in the studio. So, Mark, what can you tell us? Of course, if we take our minds back to Southport and what happened then and where we are now.
Well, of course, what happened with Southport was the horrific stabbings that took place that really brought about very significant anger and tensions. And then in the days that followed that, we saw the spark of that anger turn to disorder, not just in Southport, but in communities across particularly the north of England. And where we are 12 months on, well, the government does acknowledge the issue around tensions that illegal migration in particular is bringing to communities across the country. It seems to be more willing to discuss this, but the tensions are still there. The migrant hotels are still there, and incidents alleged linked to migrants are also still there, which are further stoking tensions. And we've seen just in the last month or so a number of protests again, which I think is deeply alarming for the government. The fact that there are a number of protests now at multiple sort of migration hotels around the country. We had seen after Southport, and actually it was a couple of years back ago, there was lots of protests outside migrant hotels. It was a thing. And then it kind of died away. Southport was a different entity. It was sparked by the real and visceral anger that had happened after the stabbings, but also on top of that, the tensions that uncontrolled mass migration was causing in communities right across the country. But the issue of migrant hotels seems to be back as a key topic again, and that is bringing people back out onto the streets to protest outside a number of different hotels. And the concern, as always, is that for the very most part, these are local protests with local people who are coming out to express their concerns, but they have the potential to bring disorder. And we've seen some small amounts of disorder in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, even in let's use Epping, for example, the Bell Hotel. I was down there last weekend. It started out with locals, concerned mums and dads, with a reaction to what happens there, or allegedly happened. But then you get people from out of area coming down and getting involved. Then you get the stand up to racism lot being bussed in. So that's as far as I can tell from being there, that's how some risk of disorder does spark. Two questions then, Mark. What can be done to temper tensions, to sort of calm people down? And what will the government do you think?
Well, I'm not sure that I can offer any kind of comfort in terms of where we're headed with community tensions, because what you've got is the issue of migrant hotels, which is clearly a very live issue for many people across the country. OK, we had over 400 hotels that were requisitioned by the Home Office for use as migrant accommodation. That has been cut almost in half, but just in recent months it's been edging up again as the numbers crossing the channel have been increasing exponentially. But it's still lower than it was. But it's still more than 200 migrant hotels across the country. So there's still tension there. But what you've got now is a policy from the government of moving these mainly young men away from migrant hotels and moving them into communities up and down the country. And the difficulty with that is, in a migrant hotel, as difficult as that was and unpalatable as that was for people to have a community asset taken out of use and filled with young migrant men for sometimes years at a time, actually the alternative, I would suggest, is probably worse, which is putting, houses of multiple occupation, or where they might be a dozen young men in the street near you, and bringing all the tensions that brings. So it may be that actually migrant hotels is the least worst option.
Well, there is another one. I think tents, and we're in a place where they are not allowed to come out, so there's no way that anyone...
Oh, completely agree. I mean, that would require a government with a bit of of courage to be able to stand up to without a doubt, all of the sort of fallout from the activists, lawyers, the NGOs, the charities who would rally round and say this was inhumane. But yes, you're right. I mean, we see it right around the globe. If you go to the Middle East and go to the Middle East and look at the millions that are in tented cities in Jordan, in areas next to Syria and Iraq, where all of the refugees have gone into these camps, you don't see the NGOs that work with the people in those camps saying that this is completely inhumane of Jordan to put them up in tented cities here.
Can I ask you, OK, so with the Southport killer, there was another young person that tried to do the same thing, and they arrested this person, but they couldn't charge them with terror offences because of the definition of what a terrorist offence is. So what do you know of what the government are doing to ensure that if someone, somebody this person was intercepted beforehand, we know Rudy Cabana was referred to Prevent 3 times, and the reasons why he wasn't charged or they didn't do anything with him was because it didn't fall underneath the definition of terror, so they let it be. Is there any development on that side of things?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because, Prevent, the counter-extremism programme, was found to be severely lacking in terms of its response, not just to the Southport murders and Axel Rudy Cabana, but also, of course, to the murder of David Amos, what happened up in Nottingham, less so. That was more of the mental health side of things, but lots of state agencies that just didn't respond in the way they should have, played this game of pass the parcel with Axel Rudy Cabana because feeling that, he didn't fit into the definition of what a young extremist, a young terrorist was. So the rules are being rewritten, and what Prevent should be looking at going forward. We know with Prevent that there has been real concerns about their focus in recent years, a focus that seems to have been on far-right extremism rather than the real threat that this country has faced for a number of years and still continues to face, which is Islamist extremism that makes 75% of the caseload for MI5 and the police, rather than less than 25% for far-right extremism. And in this country as well, we've not seen mass murder as a result of far-right extremism. So there was some real concern about Prevent's focus. Now they're also being urged not to just move away from being so focused on the likes of far-right extremism, but to look at these individuals who have no defined ideology, who are just fascinated by death and violence and are fed often online by that, and what you do with them. But you're right in terms of actually charging them. They don't fall into the terrorism definition, so they don't get potentially a terrorism charge, which carries with it a stiffer jail term. But if they are plotting to kill and murder people, then they would face,
this is what, because there was another teenager who sort of idolised the Southport killer.
Yes.
And he recently appeared in court after police were alerted that he was planning a similar knife attack on a dance school near his home, and he was charged with quite a minor offence.
Yeah.
And see, this is the problem. Rudy Cabana got through because he didn't fit in with the definition.
The reason he was charged with a minor offence is because there wasn't enough evidential proof that he was planning to commit murder. If he was planning to commit murder and they had definitive proof of that, he would have been put before the courts and charged with, a plot to carry out murders, conspiracy to murder, or whatever. So that really is all dependent on the evidence that they can get before a court, that they can prove. You can talk about, this is what he was planning, but unless you have enough evidence that will stand the process of a trial and that there's a realistic possibility that a jury will find this individual guilty, then it's never going to end up in court.
No, it was bad because it means basically under UK terrorism law, the use of or threat of violence must be for the purpose of advancing political, religious or racial or ideological causes. And if it's not, then it's not terrorism. Yeah. And that's a worry.
Mark, thank you very much. As Mark said, it would take a government of courage to try and sort the problem out. Does this government have courage? Do you have faith in the government that they will be courageous enough to take even more action to try and sort the problem out?